I almost ignored her. The thought still sits in my chest like something unfinished, like a sentence I never got to end. It was just past midnight, the kind of cold that seeps through fabric and settles into your bones, the streetlights casting that dull amber glow that makes everything feel quieter than it really is. My shift had run long. My feet ached in that dull, steady way that comes from standing for too many hours, and all I wanted was to get home, kick off my shoes, and forget the day even happened. That's when I saw her. She stood near the edge of the sidewalk, small enough that at first I thought she was just another shadow cast by the flickering light. But then she moved, just slightly, not running, not crying, not even calling out. Just there, alone. I slowed down without meaning to. People passed her. A couple walked by, laughing too loudly. A car rolled past with music thumping through the windows, and no one stopped. No one even looked twice. I told myself it wasn't my problem. Kids get separated all the time. Maybe her parents were just around the corner. Maybe she was waiting. Maybe she wasn't lost at all. I kept walking. 3 steps. Maybe 4. Then something in my chest tightened, sharp and sudden, like a quiet voice I couldn't ignore. I turned back. She hadn't moved. Up close, she looked even smaller. Maybe 6 years old. Thin jacket. No gloves. Her hands were tucked into her sleeves like she was trying to disappear inside them. Her eyes met mine, wide but not crying. That was the part that got me. Kids cry when they're scared. She didn't. She just watched me like she was waiting to see what kind of person I was going to be. I crouched down slowly, careful not to startle her. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice soft, like you do with something fragile. "You okay?" She didn't answer, just shook her head once. A small movement. Barely there. The wind picked up, pushing her hair across her face, and I reached out before I could think better of it, gently brushing it aside. Her skin was cold. Too cold. I shrugged off my coat and draped it over her shoulders. It swallowed her whole. "Where's your family?" I asked. Still nothing. Just those eyes. Watching. Trusting me in a way that felt too big for the moment. Somewhere behind me, I heard the low hum of an engine. A car idling. I didn't turn around. Not yet. My focus stayed on her. "It's okay," I whispered. "We'll figure it out." She took a step closer. Then another. And just like that, her small hand slipped into mine. Warm now. Or maybe that was just me. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment everything changed. Not when I saw her. Not when I stopped. But when she chose to trust me. Because somewhere in the dark, someone else was watching. And he had already decided I wasn't just another stranger passing by. Her fingers tightened around mine like I was the only solid thing left in her world. And for a second I forgot how cold it was, forgot how tired I felt, forgot everything except the quiet weight of that trust. "Okay," I said softly, more to myself than to her. "We are going to get you somewhere warm." I glanced up the street, scanning for anything familiar, any sign of a parent rushing back or calling her name. But the sidewalk stayed indifferent, just empty stretches of concrete and passing headlights that never slowed down. "What is your name?" I asked, kneeling slightly so I could meet her eyes again. She hesitated, her lips parting like she wanted to speak, then closing again. Instead, she squeezed my hand once. That was her answer. Silence, but not fear. Something else. Something careful. I nodded like I understood, even though I did not. "That is okay," I murmured. "We will figure it out together." The wind picked up again, sharper this time, cutting through my sweater, and I instinctively pulled her closer, wrapping my arm around her small shoulders to shield her. She leaned in without resistance, like she had already decided I was safe. That feeling hit me harder than anything else. Safe. I had never thought of myself as someone who could be that for anyone. Somewhere behind us, the low hum of that car was still there. Steady. Patient. I felt it before I acknowledged it, like a presence pressing against the back of my awareness. Slowly, I turned my head. A black SUV sat parked along the curb about 30 feet away, engine running. Headlights off. Dark windows. Too dark to see through. It had been there before. I was sure of it now. Watching. I told myself it was nothing. Just another car. Someone waiting, maybe checking their phone, maybe lost like the rest of us. But something about it did not feel casual. It felt intentional. I looked away quickly, not wanting to make it into something bigger than it was. "Come on," I said gently, giving the girl's hand a small tug. "There is a diner on the corner. It is open all night. We can go inside, get you warm, maybe call someone who can help." She nodded this time, a tiny movement, but it was enough. We started walking. Her steps were small, uneven, like she was trying to keep up without letting go. I slowed down to match her pace, adjusting without thinking. Every few seconds, I glanced down to make sure she was still there, that this was real. Halfway down the block, I felt it again. That awareness. I did not need to turn around to know the SUV had moved. I could hear it now, the soft roll of tires against asphalt, keeping distance, not close enough to alarm, but not far enough to disappear. My chest tightened, just a little. Not fear. Not yet. Just a question forming in the back of my mind. Why? I swallowed it down. Do not assume the worst. Do not create a problem where there is none. The diner's neon sign flickered ahead, red and blue cutting through the dark like a promise. Warmth. Light. Normalcy. I tightened my grip on her hand and kept walking. If someone was watching, if someone was following, I told myself it did not matter. Because right now, she needed me to keep moving. What I did not know was that every step I took, every choice I made, was already being measured by someone who had never believed in coincidence. And he had not looked away since the moment I turned back. The bell above the diner door chimed as I pushed it open, and a wave of warmth wrapped around us so suddenly it almost felt unreal, like stepping into a different world that did not know anything about cold sidewalks or silent children standing alone under streetlights. And I felt her hand tighten again, not from fear this time, but from the shock of heat returning to her skin. It is okay, I whispered, guiding her inside, the smell of coffee and something sweet filling the air, grounding me in something normal, something safe, or at least safer than outside. We slid into a booth near the window without thinking, my eyes automatically checking the street through the glass. And there it was again, the black SUV, now parked across from the diner, engine still running, still watching. I forced myself to look away before. It could mean more than it should. Hey. A voice called gently, a waitress with tired eyes and a kind expression approaching us. You two okay? I nodded quickly, offering a small smile that I hoped looked convincing. She got a little lost, I said, keeping my tone light. Normal. I just wanted to warm her up and maybe call someone who can help. The waitress glanced at the girl, then back at me, something in her expression softening. Sit tight, she said. I will get you some hot chocolate. When she walked away, the silence returned, but it felt different here, softer, less heavy. I looked at the girl again, brushing my fingers lightly over the sleeve of my coat still wrapped around her shoulders. Can you tell me your name now? I asked gently, giving her space, giving her time. Her eyes lifted to mine, steady, searching, and for a moment I thought she might finally speak, but instead she reached into her pocket, small fingers fumbling before pulling out something tiny, a silver charm on a thin chain. She placed it carefully on the table between us like it mattered more than anything else she had. I leaned in slightly, studying it. It was simple, elegant, not something you would expect a child to be carrying alone. Definitely not something cheap. My chest tightened again. This was not random. This was not just a kid who wandered too far from home. Did someone give this to you? I asked softly. She nodded once, then looked toward the window, toward the street, toward that car. My breath caught for half a second before I forced it steady. Do not assume. Do not jump to conclusions. But the feeling in my gut refused to quiet down. The waitress returned, setting 2 mugs in front of us, steam rising into the air. Careful, it is hot, she said with a small smile before leaving us alone again. I wrapped my hands around the mug, letting the heat sink into my skin, trying to think clearly, trying to decide what the next right step was. Police, maybe, or child services, something official, something that made sense. But every time I glanced at that SUV, that idea felt less simple, less safe. Like I was stepping into something I did not understand. The girl pushed the mug slightly toward me, like she wanted me to drink first, like she needed to see it was safe. I took a small sip, then nodded to her. See, it is good, I said softly. She mirrored me, carefully lifting the mug with both hands, her movements slow, deliberate, and for a moment everything felt almost normal, almost peaceful, until the diner door opened again, the bell chiming louder this time, and without looking, without needing to, I knew exactly who had just walked in, because the air itself seemed to shift, quieter, heavier, like the room was suddenly aware of something I had only begun to notice. And when I finally lifted my eyes, I realized that whoever had been watching us from the shadows had decided to step into the light. He did not rush, and that was the first thing I noticed. Not his face, not his height, but the way he moved, slow, controlled, like time adjusted itself around him instead of the other way around. The kind of presence that made conversations lower without anyone realizing why. The kind that made people glance up and then quickly look back down, pretending they had not noticed anything at all. He stepped fully into the diner light, and suddenly the space felt smaller, tighter, like the walls had shifted an inch closer. He wore a dark coat tailored too precisely to be ordinary, the fabric catching the light just enough to hint at its quality without showing off. His hair was dark, neatly styled, and his expression was calm in a way that did not invite questions, only silence. I felt my fingers curl slightly around the mug in front of me, grounding myself in something simple, something real. Do not overreact. I told myself, he is just a man walking into a diner, nothing more. But the girl beside me went completely still, not scared, not pulling away, just still, like she had been waiting for this moment all along. My breath slowed without my permission, and when his eyes finally landed on our table, I understood why. They were not cold, not exactly, but they were precise, focused, like nothing escaped them, like he had already taken in every detail of the room before stepping inside, and now he was confirming what he already knew. He did not look surprised to see us, not even a little. He walked toward the counter first, exchanging a quiet word with the waitress, his voice low, controlled. I could not hear what he said, but I saw the shift in her posture, the way her shoulders straightened, the way her smile faded into something more careful, more respectful. Then he turned, and this time he did not hesitate. Each step brought him closer to our booth, and I felt it again, that awareness pressing against my chest. This was not coincidence. This was intention. The girl's hand slipped from mine, and for a split second I thought she might pull away, might hide, might run. But she did not. She placed both hands on the table, small fingers resting beside the silver charm. Waiting, he stopped at the edge of the booth, close enough now that I could see the faint detail in his eyes, a shade of gray that caught the light like steel. His gaze moved from the girl to me, not dismissive, not threatening, just measuring. Like he was deciding something I had not agreed to be part of. You found her, he said, his voice even. Not a question, just a statement that landed heavier than it should have. My heart skipped once before I forced myself to respond. She was alone, I said, keeping my tone steady. I was going to call someone, make sure she got home safely. His eyes flicked briefly to the mug in front of her, then to the coat around her shoulders, then back to my face. Cataloging, always cataloging. You did not ask who she was, he said quietly, and there was something in that sentence that felt like a test I did not know I was taking. I shook my head slightly. She needed help. I answered, because that was the truth, simple and clear. His expression did not change, but something in his gaze shifted, subtle, almost imperceptible, like a decision being made behind a locked door. The girl finally moved, reaching for the charm and sliding it across the table toward him, her small hand steady now. Confident, he looked down at it for a moment, then back at her, and for the first time, the sharp edge in his presence softened just slightly. Not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me to feel it. You should have stayed where you were told, he said to her, his tone still calm, but carrying weight. She lowered her eyes, not in fear, but in acknowledgement, like she understood something I did not. He exhaled slowly, then looked at me again, and this time, there was no distance in his attention, no casual observation, just focus, direct and undeniable. Most people would have walked away, he said, and I felt something tighten in my chest again, because he was right. I almost had. I almost did not turn back. I almost kept walking, and if I had, none of this would be happening. He studied me for 1 second longer, then 2, and in that silence, I realized something I could not explain, something that made the warmth of the diner feel thinner, more fragile, like it could disappear at any moment. This was not just about the girl anymore. Whatever line I had crossed when I chose to stop, I had already stepped too far to pretend I was not part of it, and the way he looked at me made one thing clear. He had noticed, and he was not going to forget. For a moment, no one moved. Not me, not the girl, not even the air around us, and I realized I was holding my breath without meaning to. like something in me understood that whatever came next mattered more than it should. I set my mug down carefully, the soft clink against the table sounding louder than it was, grounding me just enough to speak again. "If she is yours, then she should not have been out there alone," I said, the words leaving my mouth before I could soften them, and the second they were out, I felt the weight of them settle between us, heavy, unavoidable. His expression did not change, but his eyes sharpened just slightly, not offended, not angry, just aware, like I had stepped into a space that did not belong to me, and he was deciding whether to let me stay there. The girl glanced between us, her small fingers curling against the edge of the table, not scared, but attentive, like she was listening for something important beneath the words. He shifted his gaze back to her for a brief second, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a quieter tone. "You walked farther than you were supposed to," he said, not harsh, not gentle, just certain. She nodded once, her eyes lowering again, accepting that statement like a fact, not a punishment. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a pair of small gloves, black, simple, and held them out to her. She took them without hesitation, slipping them on carefully, and I felt something strange settle in my chest, something that did not match the cold, controlled presence he carried, something almost deliberate, like every action he took had already been decided long before this moment. I looked at him again, really looked this time, trying to understand what did not make sense, because men like him did not just happen to show up in diners at midnight for coincidences. And yet here he was, standing in front of me like he had been waiting for this exact moment to arrive. "I was going to call someone," I repeated, quieter now, not as a challenge, but as a boundary I needed to hold on to, just to make sure she was safe. His eyes returned to mine, steady, unreadable. "And you still can," he said, but there was something in the way he said it that made it clear the option was already unnecessary, that whatever system I trusted had already been replaced by something else, something faster, more certain, more controlled. I felt a small shift in the diner, subtle but real, like the space itself was adjusting around him. The waitress no longer hovering nearby, the other customers suddenly uninterested in anything happening at our table, like an invisible line had been drawn that no one wanted to cross. I swallowed, trying to keep my thoughts clear, trying to stay grounded in something normal, but normal had already started slipping away. "You have been following us," I said finally, not accusing, just stating what I could no longer ignore. His gaze did not flicker, did not deny it, did not confirm it either. "I have been watching," he corrected calmly, and the difference between those two words settled deeper than I expected. Watching meant choice, meant intention, meant he had seen everything. The moment I turned back, the moment I offered my coat, the moment she took my hand, and something about that realization made my pulse quicken, not from fear, but from the strange weight of being seen so clearly by someone who did not miss anything. The girl shifted closer to him now, not leaving me completely, but moving just enough to stand between us, like she belonged to both moments, the one outside and the one here, and he rested a hand lightly on her shoulder, not possessive, not forceful, just present, anchoring her in place. Then he looked at me again, and this time there was no distance left in his attention, no room for misunderstanding. "Kindness is not common," he said quietly, "and it is rarely without consequence." The words lingered in the space between us, soft but heavy, and I felt something in my chest tighten again, not because I did not understand him, but because I did, because somewhere deep down I knew this was not just a conversation about a lost girl anymore. This was a moment that had already shifted something I could not take back. And the way he stood there, calm and certain, made one thing unmistakably clear: whatever came next, he had already decided I was part of it. The words stayed with me longer than they should have, settling somewhere under my skin like a quiet warning I could not ignore. And for a moment I did not know what to say, because part of me wanted to push back, to insist that helping someone should not come with consequences, that kindness was supposed to be simple. But the way he looked at me made that argument feel smaller, less certain, like I was standing on ground that was already shifting beneath my feet. I exhaled slowly, steadying myself. "She is just a child," I said, my voice softer now but no less firm. She needed someone to stop. His gaze did not waver, and neither did mine. Not this time. something in me refusing to step back even when everything around me suggested I should. The girl glanced up at him, then at me, her small hand hovering for a second before she reached out and lightly touched my sleeve, a silent gesture that made my chest tighten in a way I did not expect, like she was holding on to something that was already slipping away. He noticed it too. Of course he did, his eyes tracking the movement with quiet precision, then lifting back to my face. And for the first time since he walked in, there was something else there, not softer, not warmer, just different, like he was reassessing something he had already decided. "You think this ends when she walks out that door with me?" he said calmly, and the way he phrased it made it clear he already knew the answer. I hesitated, just for a second, because I did think that, or at least I wanted this to be a moment that stayed contained, a simple act that did not follow me home, that did not change anything beyond tonight. But the truth was already unraveling in front of me. I swallowed, my fingers tightening slightly against the edge of the table. "It should," I answered, quieter now, and even as I said it, I knew how fragile it sounded, how uncertain. He tilted his head just slightly, studying me with that same controlled focus. "It does not," he said, not unkindly, just certain, like gravity, like something that existed whether I believed in it or not. The girl shifted closer to him now, but she did not let go of my sleeve completely, her small fingers still holding on, a connection stretched between two moments that could not exist at the same time. I felt it then, that subtle pull, like something was already changing direction and I was caught in the middle of it. The waitress approached again, hesitant this time, stopping a few feet away instead of coming directly to the table. "Is everything all right?" she asked carefully, her eyes flicking between us, searching for something she could not quite name. I nodded quickly, offering a small, reassuring smile. "We are fine," I said, and she lingered for half a second before stepping back again, like she understood she was not meant to interfere. The man's attention never left me, not even for a moment, and that awareness pressed against me in a way I could not shake, like being seen too clearly, like being understood without permission. "What is your name?" he asked suddenly, and the question caught me off guard, not because it was unexpected, but because of the way he asked it, not casual, not polite, but deliberate, like it mattered more than it should. I hesitated, just long enough to feel the weight of the choice, then answered anyway. "Emily," I said, my voice steady despite the tension building in my chest. His expression did not change, but something in his posture shifted slightly, like another piece had fallen into place. "Emily," he repeated, the name sounding different in his voice, more defined, more permanent, and I felt a strange chill run through me that had nothing to do with the cold outside. The girl finally let go of my sleeve, her hand returning to her side, but the absence of that small touch felt louder than anything else in the room. Like a door closing quietly but completely, he rested his hand on her shoulder again, guiding her gently, not pulling, just directing, and she followed without resistance, without hesitation, like she trusted him in the same way she had trusted me. And that realization settled heavy in my chest, because it meant this moment was ending whether I was ready for it or not. He turned slightly, as if to leave, then paused, his gaze returning to me one last time. And there it was again, that focus, that certainty, like he had already made a decision I had not been part of. "You chose to stop," he said quietly. "That choice does not disappear." The words lingered in the air long after he turned away, and as I sat there, watching the space he left behind, I understood something I could not undo. I had not just helped a lost girl find her way home. I had stepped into something that had already begun to follow me, and I had no idea how far it was going to go. The door closed behind them with a soft chime that felt louder than it should have. And for a second, I just sat there, staring at the empty space across from me like something had been taken that I had not realized I was holding on to. The warmth of the diner suddenly felt thinner, like it had lost something the moment they walked out. I wrapped my hands around the mug again, but the heat did not reach me the same way, not anymore. My eyes drifted toward the window almost without thinking, and I caught a glimpse of the black SUV pulling away from the curb, smooth, quiet, like it had never been there at all, like the entire night had been something imagined, something that would fade the moment I stepped outside. I let out a slow breath, trying to steady myself, trying to return to something normal, But normal no longer fit the same way. Not after the way he had looked at me. Not after the way he had said my name. Emily. Like it was something he intended to remember. I shook my head slightly, pushing the thought away. You are overthinking this. I told myself. It is over. She is safe. That is all that matters. I reached for my wallet, placing a few bills on the table without really counting them. My movements automatic, like I was trying to leave before my thoughts could catch up to me. The waitress approached again, her expression softer now, curious but careful. Everything okay? She asked quietly. I nodded, offering a small smile that did not quite reach my eyes. Yeah, I said. She found her family. The words sounded simple, but they carried more weight than they should have. The waitress studied me for a moment longer, then gave a small nod, like she understood more than she was saying. You did a good thing, she said gently before stepping away. I paused at that, my hand resting on the edge of the table. A good thing. I wanted to believe that was all it was, just a moment of kindness, something that would not follow me beyond tonight, something that would not change anything. But his words echoed again, quiet and certain. Kindness is not common, and it is rarely without consequence. I pushed myself up from the booth, grabbing my bag, pulling my sweater tighter around me as I headed toward the door. The bell chimed again as I stepped outside, and the cold hit me immediately, sharp and real, grounding in a way the warmth inside no longer was. I stood there for a second, looking down the street, expecting to see nothing, expecting the night to have reset itself. But something felt different. The air, the silence, like the world had shifted slightly, and I was the only one who noticed. I started walking, my steps slower now, more aware, my eyes scanning without meaning to, every parked car, every shadow, every reflection in the dark windows. But there was no SUV, no sign of him, nothing to confirm that any of it had been real, just the quiet hum of the city moving on without me. I let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding and kept walking, telling myself again that it was over, that I could go home, sleep, wake up, and everything would be the same. But halfway down the block, something caught my attention. A figure standing near the corner, not moving, not approaching, just there, and as I got closer, I realized it was one of the men from the diner, the ones who had stayed back, the ones who had not needed to say anything to be noticed. He straightened slightly as I approached, not blocking my path, but not stepping aside either, just enough to make it clear he was waiting. For me, my steps slowed, my pulse quickening just slightly, not fear, not yet, just awareness, and before I could speak, before I could decide whether to turn or keep walking, he nodded once, respectful but deliberate. Miss Carter, he said, his voice calm, controlled. He asked me to make sure you got home safely. And in that moment, I understood something I had been trying to deny since the beginning. This was not over. It had never been over. And whatever line I thought I had crossed tonight, I was still standing on it. I did not answer right away, not because I did not understand him, but because I understood too well, and that made everything feel heavier than it should have. The cold air pressed against my skin, sharp and real, but it was nothing compared to the quiet weight of his words settling in my chest. Miss Carter, he had said it like it was already decided, like my name belonged in his world now, whether I agreed or not. I tightened my grip on my bag slightly, grounding myself before I spoke. You do not have to do that, I said, keeping my voice calm, steady, even though something inside me had already started shifting. I can get home on my own. He did not move, did not argue, just stood there with that same controlled stillness I had seen in the diner, like he was not here to convince me, only to deliver something that had already been decided. I am sure you can, he replied quietly, but that is not the point. The way he said it made something in my chest tighten again, because I knew what he meant without him needing to explain it. This was not about whether I could take care of myself. It was about something else entirely, something I had stepped into without realizing it. I glanced past him for a second, half expecting to see the black SUV again. But the street remained empty, quiet, almost too quiet, like everything unnecessary had been cleared away, leaving only this moment. I exhaled slowly, my breath visible in the cold air. And what is the point? I asked, not challenging, just needing to hear it out loud. He held my gaze for a second, then another, measuring, always measuring, before answering. He does not ignore things that matter. The words were simple, but they carried something deeper, something final, and I felt it settle in a place I could not quite reach. Matter. I almost laughed at that. The idea that anything I had done tonight could matter in a world like his. But the way everything had unfolded told me otherwise. This was not random. This was not something that would fade by morning. I nodded once, slowly, accepting more than I was ready to admit. Fine, I said, my voice quieter now. Just walk with me. It was the only compromise I could offer without giving up something I did not fully understand yet. He inclined his head slightly, like that had always been the outcome, then stepped to the side, allowing me to move forward first, not leading, not following too closely. Just there, present, steady, I started. Walking, my steps measured, aware of the quiet sound of his footsteps behind me. Matching my pace without needing to adjust. The city felt different now. Not louder, not busier, just sharper. Like every detail stood out more than before. The flicker of streetlights, the distant hum of traffic, the reflection of movement in dark windows. I kept my eyes forward, but my awareness stretched wider, noticing things I would have ignored before. Every passing shadow, every parked car, every space that felt just slightly off. You always do this? I asked after a few moments, the question leaving me before I could stop it. He did not answer immediately, and for a second I thought he might not answer at all. Then his voice came, calm as ever. No, he said simply, and somehow that made it more significant. I nodded again, processing that in silence. Because if this was not something he always did, then it meant something else, something specific, something intentional. We walked another block in quiet, the distance between us constant. Not close enough to feel intrusive, not far enough to forget he was there. And I realized then that I was not afraid, not in the way I should have been, not in the way anyone would expect. Instead, there was something else, something quieter, something more complicated, like standing on the edge of something unknown and knowing you had already taken the first step. My apartment building came into view sooner than I expected. The familiar brick exterior grounding me in a way I needed. I slowed slightly as I approached the entrance, then stopped just short of the door. Turning to face him for the first time since we started walking, he stopped too, a few feet away, his posture unchanged, his gaze steady. Waiting, always waiting. I studied him for a second, trying to understand something I did not have the words for, then shook my head slightly, more to myself than to him. You can go, I said quietly. I am home. He did not move right away, his eyes holding mine for a second longer than necessary, like he was confirming something only he could see. Then he gave a small nod, not a dismissal, not an acknowledgement, something in between, and stepped back. But just before I turned to open the door, he spoke again, his voice low, certain. This does not end here. And the way he said it made it clear it was not a warning, not a threat, just a fact, something already in motion, something that would continue whether I wanted it to or not. I paused with my hand on the door, feeling that sentence settle into place, then pushed it open and stepped inside, the warmth of the building wrapping around me. But even as the door closed behind me, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever had started tonight, it had already followed me home. I did not sleep that night. Not really. I lay there staring at the ceiling while the quiet hum of the building wrapped around me. The kind of silence that should have been comforting but was not. Because every time I closed my eyes I saw the same thing. The way he had looked at me. The way he had said my name. Like it was something that would not be forgotten. Like it had already been placed somewhere permanent. I turned onto my side, pulling the blanket tighter around me, trying to convince myself that morning would reset everything. That daylight would make it all feel smaller, less significant. But when my alarm finally went off, nothing had changed. The weight was still there, quiet but steady. I moved through my routine automatically, brushing my teeth, tying my hair back, grabbing my bag. Everything familiar, everything normal, and yet none of it felt the same. Like I was walking through a version of my life that no longer fit quite right. Outside, the air was colder than the night before, sharp against my skin as I stepped onto the sidewalk. I told myself to stop looking, to stop expecting, but my eyes moved anyway, scanning the street, the corners, the parked cars, searching for something I was not sure I wanted to find. There was nothing. No black SUV, no figures waiting, just the usual morning rush beginning to build, people moving quickly, focused on their own lives. Unaware of anything beyond their immediate path, I exhaled slowly, a part of me relieved. Another part unsettled by how easily everything could pretend to be normal. The walk to work felt longer than usual, every step carrying that same quiet awareness, like something had shifted just enough that I could not ignore it anymore. When I reached the building, I paused at the entrance for half a second, steadying myself before pushing the door open. Inside, the familiar sounds of voices and movement greeted me, grounding in a way I needed. I forced myself to focus, to move forward, to let the day take over, but the moment I stepped behind the counter, something caught my attention. A small envelope resting neatly on the surface, placed there with intention, not tossed, not forgotten, just waiting. My name was written on the front in clean, precise handwriting. Emily. I stared at it for a second, my pulse slowing instead of quickening. Like part of me had expected this, like part of me knew it would not end with a single night. I reached for it slowly, my fingers brushing against the paper, feeling the weight of something unseen settle deeper into place. I did not open it right away. I did not need to, because I already understood what it meant. This was not a coincidence. This was not chance. This was continuation. The choice I made last night had not faded with the dark. It had followed me into the light. I slid my thumb under the edge of the envelope and opened it carefully, pulling out a single card. Simple, elegant, with a number written in the same precise hand. Nothing else. No explanation, no demand, just an option, or maybe something that felt like an option. I stared at it for a long moment, the noise around me fading into the background, and then I saw it, a second line beneath the number, written smaller, almost like an afterthought. But it was not. Not really. You chose to stop. Now I choose not to look away. I let out a slow breath, my fingers tightening slightly around the card, because in that moment, I understood something with absolute clarity. This was not about the girl anymore. This was not about a single act of kindness. This was about being seen, being chosen, being pulled into a world that did not operate by the same rules I had always known. I looked up from the card, the room coming back into focus, the normal sounds, the normal faces, everything exactly where it should be, and yet nothing felt untouched. I slipped the card into my bag, not throwing it away, not leaving it behind, because some part of me already knew that ignoring it would not make it disappear. And as I moved through the rest of the morning, one thought stayed with me, quiet but undeniable. He had been right. Some choices do not end when the moment passes, some choices echo, and this one had only just begun.